Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined today by Denny Carter and Kyle Dvorchak. Patrick Crane cannot be with us today. And, we're back to talk about football after one of the strangest, definitely the most somber weeks we've ever had working at this website. Just the worst possible, most brutal reminder of how brutal this game is. And Denny Carter, you wrote something about it on our website.
Yeah.
Extremely good article. Please check it out if you have not. But yeah, I thought your thoughts on it were really honestly just perfect.
Thank you. Yeah, kind of felt compelled to write it because of the, feelings that you have covering the league and covering fantasy football, and then seeing something like this happen, and you want to draw from it what you can. And I think one thing that we can draw from this horrible incident is the humanity of football players. And it's something that can be so easily lost. So if you don't mind, I just wanted to read one little snippet from the piece, which you all can find on the website. Football players openly weeping and holding each other. It tugs at your humanity in a way other spectacles cannot. It's so regrettably easy to forget these gladiators are indeed human, in many ways as frail and vulnerable as you and me. To watch them express their humanity in such a raw manner would make anyone well up with emotion. And I can speak for myself when I say that, seeing players' reaction on Monday night in Cincinnati, really it hit me in a way that I guess I wasn't expecting it to. But you see grown people express that kind of emotion, and you're wondering, what are they seeing? What are they feeling? It really, like I said, tugs at you. And I think it's a good reminder for all fantasy football players that we play a game, a nerdy game within a game, and that these are real people on the field.
And yeah, you say we forget the humanity, and we focus a lot of times on the negative way we forget the humanity, people tweeting horrible things on players too, at players. But we also forget too, the superhuman things they seemingly do. It's even the good stuff they do comes at a price too. Yes, and how much work, how much dedication, how much just risk goes into that. And yeah, it was not the reminder we wanted, but it was a reminder that just the most brutal possible reminder of those facts. And let's try to do a better job of not forgetting it, maybe going forward. And we are going forward. Got to talk about Week 18. Got to talk about Saturday, Kansas City Chiefs at the Las Vegas Raiders. The Chiefs can now, we're recording this where we don't know actually what the NFL's ruling is on the Bengals Bills situation. It appears they're going to declare it a no contest, and it would seem that the Chiefs then could wrap up the number one seed based on winning percentage if they beat the Raiders on Saturday, where they're 9-point favorites, in a 52 totaled affair. Again, we do not know. You might know by the time you're listening to this podcast. Hopefully you will know by the time you're listening to this podcast, because we have to assume the NFL is making a decision before Saturday. But Kyle, you get to start talking about normal football now. So you get the awkward segue here, because we're here to talk about football, and we're here to talk specifically about the Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver Skylar Moore, ruled out for this game after getting a career high 4 targets in Week 17. No, he had 6 targets a few times earlier this year. What is the lay of the land with the Chiefs receivers? Where Skylar Moore's out, Mecole Hardman is returning ahead of the playoffs.
Yeah, I think this game probably won't be the most realistic depiction of what we see in the playoffs because, like you said, we're getting potentially Kadarius Toney, Mecole Hardman back, no Skylar Moore. So it's rotating pieces of players who haven't played in weeks and then one player who has played for weeks and will now be out of the lineup. I think in the long term, I know you guys talked about it, I think on the Monday show, just the insane efficiency that we've seen from Kadarius Toney when he's on the field at converting his just raw snaps into targets and then yards and touchdowns. And I think that has to be the long-term plan. You don't pay what they paid for him to not have him be eventually, and especially with MVS has to be off the roster. Maybe they don't choose to take whatever money they are forced to eat and cut him next year, but he will probably be off the roster within a year or two. Then Juju Smith-Schuster, a free agent. You have to think Kadarius Toney is the future. So maybe it's not in this week. Maybe if you're thinking about it from a DFS angle, it is more of a complete toss-up between them and Justin Watson, who ever since they lost Toney and lost MVS, it really has been Justin Watson who, in terms of snaps, not production, but snaps, has been forced to step up. But I think as we look towards the playoffs, this should be a team that wants to utilize Kadarius Toney more. And I could even see them playing Mecole Hardman straight up over MVS, who has been essentially a wind sprinter, not that much different than Justin Watson, simply a pumped up version and a far more expensive version of him.
It seemed like Mecole Hardman was kind of taking on a bigger role before he got hurt too, where he was kept scoring in fantasy, kind of like weird. I know he had a few rushes. Apparently, he only had 4 rushes, but yeah, Mecole Hardman had gone over 30 yards 4 straight weeks before his injury. He'd scored in 3 straight games. Kind of forgot about that. And Denny, before you jump in real quick, I think Kadarius Toney is might be one of the X factors of the entire playoff tournament. Which I mean, the second Kadarius Toney gets healthy, we all start talking about him like he's the next Antonio Brown,
but for good reason.
Yeah, and the Chiefs, they just have not had that second playmaker develop behind Travis Kelce still this season. I mean, Jerick McKinnon has kind of done it. Juju Smith-Schuster has kind of done what Juju Smith-Schuster has done. If you talk about throwing the ball to someone, if you need a play, the Chiefs have Travis Kelce, and they still don't have that second guy. And this is hard not to shake the feeling that it should and maybe could be Kadarius Toney in the biggest games of the entire year.
I could see it happening. The Chiefs coaches and Travis Kelce himself have talked, very highly. A lot of praise.
Is Kelce Toney pilled too?
He's Toney pilled for sure. We don't know if he's Dortch pilled, but we do know that he is Toney pilled. And yeah, I mean, when he's on the field, he commands targets because he gets open, because he's an electric player. 26% rate, a target per route run rate, as a Chief. So it's just, I could see that unfolding. I wanted to quickly mention with the Chiefs receivers, Juju is 102 yards away from 1,000 yards on the season. I don't know how important that is to Andy Reid, to Mahomes, to Juju himself, but I think it is worth noting, especially as Mahomes chases history here with the single season yardage record.
Yeah, what is it? He's 430 yards away from the single season yardage record. And of course, sadly, we have to asterisk that since it's the 17th game, Denny, and I will going to go to my grave as a curmudgeon. So it's not a real record, right?
If Mahomes played in the 90s, he'd have thrown for 7,000 yards. Those.
Or you could argue if he played in the 90s, he would have, they did some big hits back then. It's kind of
he's slippery. He's avoiding those.
That's true. He actually would have really avoided. He would have been amazing in the 90s. But
and the thing is, in the 90s, they lowered their helmets so low to the ground that they didn't see anything. They didn't have any good vision there. So he was ducking them left and right for sure.
But don't ever go back and look up Troy Aikman's Pro Football Reference or even John Elway's. So they'd be like Zach Wilson level stats today, but it was just such a different game. I will defend the guys like Troy Aikman and John Elway. People pull up Troy Aikman's Pro Football Reference, this guy was a plumber, playing quarterback. But it was just I actually am a big believer in the hashtag different era. And the stats aren't.
Doesn't Dan Marino have legit 2024 era stats? His stats all look like they would be very, very good for this era, which is hilarious when you don't need to era adjust. And if you did, they would just blow your mind.
It's true. And Kyle, we say this a lot, jokingly, you're too young to remember this. You actually are too young to remember. Denny, when Dan Marino retired, he was kind of talked about as the greatest quarterback who had ever played. And it was really unfortunate for him that he never got the Super Bowl. But yeah, he was 3 decades ahead of his time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, his 80s seasons, some of his early 80s seasons were just off the charts. No one had even thought about those numbers. Like a quarterback could achieve those numbers. I do think, I was a big Marino guy as a kid.
Did he become a choker?
No, he was great under pressure. We'd have to look at the analytics to confirm that, but his last 5 seasons were pretty sad. And I think that kind of colors the way people remember him. He probably should have retired several years before he did. The Jimmy Johnson era with him was a complete debacle, and it was so totally predictable. But man, yes, Kyle is right. You don't have to adjust those numbers from the 80s. It's amazing.
You do have to adjust your glasses when you check out the final score of Dan Marino's final career game, a 62-7 playoff loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I was in a ski lodge watching that, trying not to cry.
I'm trying not to, please. Give me a break. Yeah, exactly. So we talk about one GOAT quarterback, Dan Marino, Denny, to now the new GOAT, quarterback, Jarrett Stidham of the Vegas Raiders. Threw for more yards than Derek Carr had all season in week 17. Threw for 3 touchdowns, a number Derek Carr had reached only twice. A 52 total in this game. The Raiders are 9-point dogs. Teams throw against the Chiefs because that's what you have to do to try to keep up. Is it Stid season for week 18?
Well, I actually think he's a very volatile type of option, either for DFS or if you're, for some reason, still playing redraft this week. Yes, the Chiefs are a pass funnel, not an extreme one, a slight pass funnel, and that's sort of changed over the past month or so. But Stidham was very aggressive last week, and it paid off. He had the second highest downfield passing rate of week 17. And guys, can I ask you to guess who had the highest downfield passing rate of week 17?
The highest downfield passing rate of week 17.
Not Daniel Jones,
Because
Josh Dobbs. I didn't see any.
Oh, that's a funny guess. Is that's a
no?
funny
I was trying to
guess.
think of the dumbest possible guess.
Oh, I think Denny's setting us up for the dumbest possible answer.
Yeah.
I assume. What other terrible? I don't. Sam Darnold.
Desmond
That's not even
Ridder?
dumb enough.
Darnold's close. Mac Jones.
Oh, my word. And he might be getting Devontae Parker back this week. We'll talk about that in a minute
Yeah.
when they play the Buffalo Bills.
Mac Jones. I couldn't believe it. I had to update the spreadsheet several times.
You had to adjust the ranks, literally.
Yeah. And like Kyle said, Darnold was up there. Only Darnold last week had more yards on downfield passing attempts than Stidham. So, like I said, very aggressive, obviously just chucking it up for Davante Adams, which is good. It can work. It does work more often than not. But I think that no rushing, you're getting no rushing out of Stidham. So I think that it's a little bit of a volatile option.
Volatile option. We're not trying to scold our audience, but you should not be playing week 18 redraft, but some people are. I did do week 18 rankings. I'll be honest, it's pretty hard to do a good job with these. And I have Stidham's like the QB 16. So it's honestly probably too optimistic. It's like the classic.
That's fair though, because there's so many quarterbacks we can pretty safely assume are not getting a full 4 quarters.
Yeah.
So we know for sure he's getting a full 4 quarters in a high scoring affair. That's QB 16. I think,
and it could easily be. We know it could easily be QB 12, or higher. Is he tournament chalk? Is he cash? Chalk?
It's the 2-game slate because.
Oh, that's right. Denny and I talked about this on Monday. We already had some sicko talk about Stidham.
Yeah. Well, I actually, if you don't mind, I wanted to ask Kyle about his thoughts on this because I've built way too many lineups for Saturday. Is there any chance
you're a hand builder, right?
I do the hand building, yes. Is there any chance that Trevor Lawrence goes under rostered?
Oh yeah, I think he's the key to the Saturday slate. Just to be honest,
I don't know because I haven't looked yet, but you probably want. I guess there's not a lot of expensive players to pay up for on the slate, right? It's going to be Travis Kelce, Mahomes, and Derrick Henry. There's not.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, Jacobs and Adams. So maybe. I would think it's possibly Stidham that goes. I think it's got to be 80% of all rostership goes to the 2 quarterbacks we care about. And maybe those 2 flip on Mahomes should be, 48 and he's 42. But I do think maybe Stidham could be the one based solely on the fact that if you need to have Travis Kelce, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, and Davante Adams, the only way to get them in would be Stidham.
Right.
But it would just be a roster construction thing. It's not even I think he has that great of a chance, obviously, of being the highest scoring quarterback. But if he drops if he did what he did last week, even a little less, even if it's bad, even if it's ugly, that is certainly enough to give him a very strong chance of being in the winning lineup, assuming that both Adams and Henry and probably Kelce, who are all great players, they all drop 30. You need all 3 of them, and maybe Stidham's the one that makes it work. Dobbs is the one who I can't know 1% ownership.
Maybe it should be Dobbs because I kept coming back to the fact that Mahomes is gonna have huge rostership because he's Patrick Mahomes, and then Stidham, Mike, just because he's the plausible cheap one, the cheap one who might actually get home. So then it led me to Lawrence.
Oh, I'd be fine if it's Lawrence, but I couldn't do Dobbs.
No, yeah, don't do Dobbs.
Well,
although clearly it's got to be Dobbs.
Listen, Dobbs. And Robert Woods or Treylon Burks is, like Kyle has said, God level leverage off of Derrick Henry. Get off of Derrick Henry. Go with those guys.
Get off of Derrick Henry. We got to get off this game because we've spent a long time. We were planning to go faster today and spend about 10 minutes on the
famous last words. Famous last words,
which bring us to the most famous game of Week 18, the Tennessee Titans at the Jacksonville Jaguars in the AFC South Championship game. Denny, speaking of Josh Dobbs, we have to actually talk about him now. How does he affect this game? In my notes, I put, how does Dobbs affect game? LOL, ? LOL.
I saw that. Well, okay. I know we spent a ton of time on the first game. I'll just say this. With Malik Willis under center, the Titans would have never thrown 39 times like they did against the Cowboys last week. That just would not have happened with Willis. So the possibility of throwing 30 to 40 times if the Titans are chasing points here against Jacksonville is now there. So we have to take that into account for the 2-game slate. But the adjusted yards per attempt is pretty similar to Willis, 5.3 for Dobbs, 4.3 for Willis. So it's a ton of check down stuff. You're not
some chucks down the field.
That's right. And
it feels like with these weak arm quarterbacks, whenever they are throwing like a 7-yard out, they're chucking it all the way down 7 yards, but far to the sideline. So it's a pretty far throw for their arms.
But it puts just the potential for increased pass volume in a negative game script puts Chig in play, which he's not in play if Willis is under center. It puts Burks if he's able to play, because I know he missed practice.
He's going to play. Mike Vrabel said Thursday he's probably going to play. It just seems like they're being cautious in practice.
So it puts these guys in play just based solely on the fact that they're not going to throw 14 times like they did with Willis.
Throw 14 times, may complete like 5 of them for like 32 yards. So Josh Dobbs, I think Denny and Kyle both agree the key to the entire Saturday slate. It's very obvious. Kyle, what is the state of the Jaguars pass catchers heading into this game, heading into the playoffs? Things have just become quite muddled between Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, and like Evan Ingram, like going like Tony Gonzalez mode. It's like, what is going on with the Jaguars pass catchers?
I mean, you laid it out. It's muddled. In the past 5 weeks, they have 3 guys over a 20% target share, but Evan Ingram only leads the way at 26, which is great for a tight end. That's kind of the one differentiator, is when you've got 2 receivers both flip-flopping at 22, 23%. It is hard to choose, but when you've got one player who's eligible for a terrible position in tight end, you're like jamming Evan Ingram. So that's kind of the one differentiator. I will say, versus the early part of the season, Marvin Jones has almost completely been phased out. I know he went 661 last week on 7 targets, but over the past 5 weeks, his target share is down to 13%. His snaps are also falling. We've seen a little bit of the backup tight ends giving them some extra run too. I would have said week 7 or 8. Sure, it's a high-scoring game. If it was a high-scoring game, throw some, it's a good matchup for the outside receivers versus the Titans. Throw some Marvin Jones in there. I mean, I guess technically because it's a 2-game slate, you could still do it. But if it were a full slate, I'd say no way. Obviously, he's kind of been phased out. He's the reason we can have like back-to-back blow-up spots for someone like Zay Jones, or we can have multiple of the receivers go off, or at least have usable fantasy days. It's because Marvin Jones is getting phased out.
Sorry, I was trying to think of it. It was always Marvin Jones' joke. If you didn't talk about him, but then you talked about him quite eloquently, I was going to act like he was going to be the key to the Jags receiver core. And now I'm just explaining a really unfunny joke.
Jaguars tight ends, by the way, 15 receptions the last time these 2 teams played.
Who? I mean, Dan Arnold and who?
It was the Evan Ingram nuke guy.
Yeah. Okay, never mind.
I mean, it was 12 from Ingram and then the rest.
Who's the backup?
Well, and Chris Manhertz.
Arnold and Manhertz. Yeah.
Wow, Chris Manhertz. We love our Chris Manhertz.
We do.
The New England Patriots hosting the Buffalo Bills. The Bills 7-point road favorites. The Bills, of course, in a very unsettled situation still. I mean, the Associated Press has reported the Bengals-Bills game will not be resumed. The Bills are going to need to win this game. The Bills, thankfully, have gotten very good news on Damar Hamlin's health as the week has progressed. Hopefully that remains good heading into the weekend. So just a strange game, a very, very strange game atmosphere. Kyle, we'll actually start with the Patriots, where I didn't know that Mac Jones was throwing downfield more than any quarterback in Week 17. So is Rhamondre Stevenson having his workload curtailed because Damian Harris is back? Rhamondre didn't have the greatest month of December, where he literally single-handedly gave a game away. That was more Jacoby Myers than Rhamondre Stevenson.
Yeah. That's on Myers.
Had a fumbling December, let's put it that way, and has been kind of wearing down a little bit. Damian Harris is back. Is Rhamondre Stevenson having his workload curtailed?
I mean, we don't have a lot of sample to work with, so I don't want to completely give up Last week was bad, though. It was tough. We got 57% snaps. That was his lowest in a healthy game since week 4. 10 touches was his lowest in a game since tying that at week 1. Damian Harris, on the other hand, 9 carries, 3 targets. And the worst part of it all was, it was 50% route rate on terms of routes he ran on Mac Jones dropbacks. That is not what we're playing for, as Denny would call it, the PPR scam and the long runs. But
first off, I coined that, by the way, not Denny.
Denny seems to love to point out that Rhamondre is a 6 catches, 18 yards kind of guy or whatever.
Yeah, right.
But he also he's an incredible runner. And he's a good pass catcher, I think, although the results have mostly been in terms of volume. But we didn't see that last week, right? We didn't see the volume last week, neither through the air nor on the ground. Heading into last week, Rhamondre hadn't had a full practice since heading into week 14. And Damian Harris had been practicing but not playing for a while. So I think their health
long time.
Yeah, man. I think their health was almost trending in the wrong direction, where we saw like it was the Cardinals game a few weeks ago that Rhamondre got very hurt in, didn't finish the game, and didn't practice, didn't get a full practice in ever since then, and was limited and not practicing for a while. So I think it makes sense in terms of player health standpoint. If you've got Damian Harris, who's probably relatively fresh, and Rhamondre, who has just been he has been a workhorse and it has been taking a toll on him, I kind of think it makes sense for them to continue to split work. Stevenson was entirely off the practice report this week, so maybe there's some optimism for a rebound, but I wouldn't count on it.
Rhamondre Stevenson's 14 yards shy of 1,000 on the ground. And speaking of Denny calling him a PPR scam, he does have 64 catches for 393 yards. That is 6.1 yards per catch, which, running back, the kind of 8.0 is kind of the cutoff for what you want. I mean, 7.0, you really need to get there. 6.1, you might want to be directing those targets somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the spreadsheet, you watch the film, it's just catch and fall down.
You look at the dots, the dot doesn't go anywhere.
Yes.
Denny, so the Bills, what kind of offense do we expect the Bills to play against the Patriots? Really, what kind of offense do we expect the Bills to play during the postseason? I know Corain has talked about them getting much more run, pass, neutral.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they kind of did the same thing last year where they ramped up their rushing attack late in the year. Then they did go pretty pass heavy in the playoffs. What do we expect from the Bills offense?
Well, I think, like a lot of good teams, like the Eagles, basically, the Bills have showed a willingness to attack a weak run defense. And, they're not just going to establish the pass over and over and over again if you can be exploited on the ground. And so if I could just read some pass rate over expected numbers from the Buffalo offense. I
thought you would pick up Crane's baton and do this if he wasn't here. So I'd be interested to hear these.
He gave me half his best ball winnings to do this. So, so his pass rate over expected for Buffalo over the past 4 weeks, -3, 2, 1, 0. This is very vastly different than we saw early in the season. And it has meant more work for James Cook. It has meant more work for Devin Singletary. It has meant that there's Stephon Diggs and nobody else really in that passing game because of Josh Allen's propensity to take off and run himself. Now, New England is one of the league's most extreme pass funnels. So I don't know if they're going to try that this week. But it's worth noting going down the line, if you plan on playing DFS in the postseason, if the Bills face a team that can be had on the ground, they're probably going to try it. Just keep that in mind.
I feel like, man, they do try during the regular season. I do feel like the Bills are really good when it's a big game. They don't mess around. I mean, it was fun to pretend like we might run in December, but in January, I don't know if they'll actually do that. But I don't know, teams don't usually pass up those opportunities to run the ball. So that brings us to Lions, Packers, the other biggest game of the week. Real quick, Kyle. So Packers are 4.5-point home favorites. They win. They are in the playoffs. What's the deal with the Lions' motivation?
Lions need a win and a Seattle loss. Seattle kicks off and will finish before them. Though it strikes me as this would be true of most coaches, but especially true of Dan Campbell. If he spends 7 consecutive days preparing his starters to play, they will play. I think for especially, even if they're eliminated, there are some other teams that will prepare to start and get locked in, which maybe could change the calculus for them. Chargers are this team we'll talk about later. But I do think even if they're eliminated an hour before kickoff, maybe they're a tiny bit lighter with their injury. Someone sprains an ankle and gets pulled safely as possible. But I don't think there's any way we don't see starters for full 4 quarters just because of the style of this team. And there's still a decent chance they are indeed playing for a playoff spot.
Yeah, and I think even if the Seahawks win, that they want to put an exclamation point on what has been like their turnaround season, their comeback season, especially doing so by beating the Packers in Green Bay, kind of like
knocking them out of the playoffs would be like a very triumphant moment, even if it's not to make their own playoffs.
I guess a very boomer point, but like sending a message heading into 2023, like this is not the same old Lions. So Denny, the total is currently under 50 still, but it's one of the week's highest totals. Is this game going to the moon? Was my question to you.
Yeah. So the point total is going up since Monday, but I kind of think this profiles as a potential slog, and I take no pleasure in saying that. I'm
gonna look up the weather in Green Bay while you're talking too.
Yeah. So last time these teams played was 15-9. Lions won in the Dome.
That was a weird game. The Packers had like a bunch of like failed goal line drives. That was a really weird game.
You're right. I think Rodgers threw his first 2 red zone picks since like 2008 or something.
Yeah, it was something crazy like that.
Detroit ran 31 times in that game. Packers are still really being gashed on the ground. Obviously, last week was different because the Vikings were just destroyed from the start and had no chance to do anything.
But it wasn't Kirk Cousins' fault, according to the people tweeting at us.
Here are people who don't take any blame. Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, the entire Vikings offense, every Vikings coach, the water boy, the guy who dries the towels. None of those guys are to blame. We're looking into who to blame. No one knows. Anyway, and so Green Bay ranks 6th in pressure rates this season, and we all know how Jared Goff kind of folds under pressure. They're playing more man coverage to compensate for their horrible zone defense from earlier in this season. So I don't know. I don't think the Lions can push the Packers, is what I'm saying, and the Packers are content not scoring. Like the Packers are content scoring 13 points and winning. So I think this could go way under.
It sounds like what you're saying. We need the Lions to get a big early lead.
Yeah, I mean that would be nice, but like this is a bad environment for Jared Goff.
We need 10 or 14 first quarter points from the Lions, I think. But the weather shouldn't be a factor. It'll be a crisp and clear 32. It'll be under freezing, but no precipitation, not under 20 degrees. So they will be able to feel their bodies and play football in Green Bay, Wisconsin on Sunday night. So I mean, any part of a shootout, Kyle, would probably require DeAndre Swift doing good stuff like he actually did in week 17. But I believe Justin Jackson's back practicing this week, right?
Correct.
I don't even know what my phrasing actually meant here. I said, are we in never again territory with DeAndre Swift? Like, I don't even know what I meant. Should we cut our losses after getting one good week out of him? Or can we trust him? Because, I mean, the Packers are really, really, really bad run defense. And despite Denny's doom saying it is a good scoring environment on paper.
Yeah, I mean, maybe what you were referencing was that Justin Jackson was out, and despite that, DeAndre Swift ran around on 40% of Jared Goff's dropbacks. He only earned a 35% snap share. It was a blowout, but they played their starters up until a final series of Niels, who maybe started still out there for that one. They played at least everyone other than Jared Goff. The receivers and the running backs were still out there for the penultimate drive they had. And even though Justin Jackson was out, they just let Craig Reynolds do the same thing. And they didn't. And the funny thing is, and this is probably some small semblance of strategy within their weird ideas, is that Craig Reynolds almost didn't run any routes. He just stayed out there to pass block. But that meant they weren't using DeAndre Swift on any of those passing plays. So per usual, they still ran a 3-back committee. It just doesn't show up in terms of touches. So this is a good spot for running backs. Like Denny said, the Packers have been dreadful against the run all year. And that's exactly what the Lions want to do to you. They want to run the football, mostly with Jamal Williams. But as we've seen more recently, they're willing to push DeAndre Swift to a dozen or so touches. And as far as next year goes, it's a really weird situation because Jamal Williams coming off of, what was it, 15 touchdowns?
Oh, I forgot that I wrote next season.
Yeah.
I was thinking of week 18. Like, what does this even mean? Never again territory for week 18. I was like, why did I write this? I missed the final 2 words of my question. Next season.
Yeah, well, Jamal Williams, a free agent. Justin Jackson, a free agent. Craig Reynolds, a free agent. They have some practice squad guy on the IR. I don't know who he is. He's not a free agent. So there's a lot of moving parts here. I have to imagine they bring other players in. But if that player is not potentially as good as Jamal Williams, it could be a situation in which we're getting sort of Tony Pollard type of usage.
I was going to say, are we ever going to get our Tony Pollard moment with this guy? because he's.
I mean, did we? Like he's already kind of at the Tony Pollard spot. He's maybe a little bit below it, but I think he could be that type of player where we're always begging the coach to give him 25 carries and 10 targets in a game, and it never happens. And maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, but that level of volume would at least result in running back 2 numbers, as it generally has with DeAndre Swift. He does strike me as a player who we will never see the full-time role, though.
He Pollarded a bit more last year than he did this year, but still not that much more.
And you'll be paying more for him in drafts. Like Tony Pollard was drafted this year as just the best backup in the league, right? He wasn't being drafted as if he would average 15 touches a game. You're going to have to draft Swift like that. So it'll be weird. It really does depend a lot on how they spend their capital at running back, though.
I can see Tony Pollard being a really fiercely debated offseason ADP for a variety of reasons, by the way. We'll be right back after this. It's a new era as the inaugural season of the Super Motocross World Championship gate drops this week in Anaheim. Watch Eli Tomac start his title defense live on Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern on USA and Peacock, or catch an encore presentation Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern on NBC. Remember, you can watch all the action in 2023 live on Peacock. The New York Jets visit the Miami Dolphins, a total under 40. 1 point favorite for the New York Jets, who have Mike White starting quarterback. We thought that was a good thing last week, but it wasn't. He really backed up quarterback really hard. And it's probably one of the big reasons why this total is under 40. Also, because the Dolphins are starting Skylar Thompson, the one quarterback Mike McDaniel has not been able to manage and manipulate so far this season, Kyle. All that being said, I mean, 38.5, doesn't that feel kind of low for this total? Like, strikes me as very low. I'll just be honest.
You used two, I guess you maybe a few more proper nouns in the last few sentences. And they were Mike White, Skylar Thompson. And now you're saying that this total looks low. That's what you're telling me. Skylar Thompson is going to face off against Mike White. Skylar Thompson is going to face off against...
It's just a bad day for Mike White last week. He'll be back this week.
He might be back. He has been good in some relative degree in other spots. Can't say the same as Skylar Thompson. Thompson went 17 of 33, 166 yards and an interception in week 5, which he didn't start. He didn't get prepped as a starter, but he did play 99. He missed 1 snap. I think Teddy Bridgewater immediately got hurt. So in terms of workload, we'll call it a start. It was not good. Dolphins also leaned into their lack of quarterback play with a -8% pass rate over expected. We saw some Skylar Thompson last week. It was his highest snap share since week 5, -6% pass rate over expected. I think we may end up being robbed of a fun Miami offense that we kind of could even get with Teddy Bridgewater, because he is at least a competent game manager. And when you have
he used to be, he really kind of hasn't been this year.
He's still better than Skylar Thompson, I think. Although I don't know, it does seem a little hair splitty. So I do think they play less interesting Miami football in that they pass a lot and they at least get the ball. I think the one thing we noticed a lot when they didn't have Tua is we kind of saw Jalen Waddle really struggle to earn targets. It was the let's scheme everything we can for Tyreek Hill show. Maybe we see it again this week. I kind of expect we do, and more running. And that's also part of the reason. More running is part of the reason we could end up seeing this game 38.5 be a correct line. And the Jets are they're not a bad run defense, but they are an incredible pass defense. So another reason that we could see Mike McDaniel lean into the run. No fun for anyone, but that may end up being their optimal strategy.
Kyle, off the top of your head, what do the Dolphins need to make the playoffs? I know they need the Patriots to lose. Do you know what do the Dolphins need to make the playoffs? Anybody else looking into that? Anybody know?
I think they are just Patriots lose and they win. Then the Steelers would be both those teams lose and Steelers win, obviously.
The Steelers, we can't have that happen again. That happened last year, and everyone remembers what happened. The Chiefs, the Steelers, remember last year, they didn't even want to make the playoffs. No. Like Ben Roethlisberger got to Arrowhead Stadium. He was like, why am I here?
I don't even want to be here anymore.
He did not even want to be there anymore. And
was it the year before that the same thing happened versus the Browns? Was that in the playoffs?
No, they desperately wanted that.
They did want that one real bad. That was where they went down 28-0 in the first quarter. And that's when they were like a high seed. Remember that year? What they started like 11-0 or something?
Oh my! What are the times we've lived through?
I know, and they were like, everyone's like, wow, they are really bad, but they're 11-0 or whatever their record was, and then they got absolutely annihilated by the Browns.
That was iconic,
and that was iconic. So Denny, I mean, Kyle kind of laid it out. Are the Dolphins just totally screwed with Skylar Thompson? I guess Teddy Bridgewater hasn't been officially ruled out yet, but it seems like it's going to happen.
Yeah, it does. And the site, what they added Mike Glennon to the roster or whatever.
Oof, yeah, that wasn't a good sign.
I think it was Glennon. Very clear sign that they are at least concerned, to say the least. And they also listed Teddy with the knee issue that he had earlier. I mean, that one's probably closer to maintenance, but the pinky, the knee, I don't know.
So Denny, you regret to inform Denny?
Yeah, I mean, it's over for the Dolphins. So let's just cut to the chase here. Skylar Thompson is like not a pro level quarterback. Last week he ranked 30th in completion rate over expected. One of his 22 attempts traveled over 20 yards downfield, so everything is just near or at the line of scrimmage. Jets are a really good secondary. I think the Jets will eat Skylar Thompson alive. I mean, you're talking about like multiple picks guaranteed here, and sacks and glory. We were talking before the show. I think, and I don't do the ranks, and you guys are the rankings dudes, and so I'll defer to you. But I would have a hard time ranking Tyreek Hill as a top 15 wide receiver this week.
Yeah, Kyle kind of called out my Tyreek Hill rank. I do have Tyreek in the top 10 still, because I just have that much faith in Mike McDaniel's scheming. Like, I just think there's just no way he won't manufacture. Pretty much, this is going to be like the 17 out of 17 weeks he's manufactured touches for Tyreek Hill. I do have enough faith in his ability to manufacture touches for Tyreek Hill that I'm keeping him in the top 10. I don't know if Kyle does, though. Kyle didn't do his rankings this week, but I mean, what do you say, Kyle?
I think I still will have, in the same way that I kind of agree with you, he will get at a minimum manufactured touches. And even if they run their normal, which still manufacture some touches, but even if they ran their normal target distribution, that is still an incredible role. Last time we saw, the full, I'll call it the full, was 99% snap share from Skylar. 7 for 47 plus some rushing work, 13 yards on the ground. I mean, the volume was again there enough. I'm probably still keeping him wide receiver 1, but like I wouldn't blame you for not. It's going to be ugly.
Do we have any hope for a Mike White and Garrett Wilson rebound on week 17? I mean, Mike White looked fully exposed. I mean, he looked every bit like the guy who is so often with these backup quarterbacks. They're really good the first start. They're still like kind of spunky the second and third start, and then after there's like a month worth of film on him, opposing defense is like, all right, just break him in half, and it seemed like that kind of happened with Mike White.
Yeah, no, it did. I mean, the one thing you could say is that on paper it's a good matchup. The Dolphins are pretty weak in the secondary, strong against the run, so maybe that generates pass volume for Mike White. But then you think about the game environment in total, and the fact that Skylar Thompson and the Dolphins are not going to be able to push at all, and you wonder where that's going to come from beyond like a big play to Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, so we'll see. It's week 18. We're hoping for some miracles. We're hoping for Tom Brady to not play, right, and like the Bucs starters not to play, just so we have some sort of predictable game environment in Bucs Falcons. But I don't know if it was Bill Belichick or if it was Tom Brady, but Tom Brady like had a lot of week 17s, now week 18s. In New England where they had nothing to play for, and he's like, I'm gonna play, can't stop me, and goes out there and play with like deep into the third quarter always. Are the Bucs seriously going to give their starters snaps in this game? I mean, they're claiming that they're going to. I mean, what do we really expect from the Bucs offense against the Falcons?
Todd Bowles, he's a football guy, Yes. he is a tough dude. I cannot relate. I will say that I think that there's a pretty good chance that they are going to play some snaps here, whether it's a quarter or a half. And again, look, I don't understand the logic behind like, let's get Tom Brady some reps. Okay. Like what?
let's get him his 37,496, 97th and 98th rep.
Like Mike Evans has not been able to get up off the turf on his own since week 2. Like
even Godwin was really banged up in week 17 too.
Yeah, they had to have teammates literally peel them off the grass every single play, and they're gonna they need more reps. They got to get in there. So I don't.
Leonard Fournette's playing through a Lisfranc injury.
Yeah, right. He has like a serious chronic foot injury. And,
I don't think he was even on the injury report this week.
Yeah, that is curious how he comes out on Twitter and says, "I have the most serious foot injury possible." And
got the Frank. Yeah, he's not on the injury.
Team's like, never heard of it. Sorry.
Not on the injury report with the Frank this week.
So I did write in my column on week 18 possibilities that Keyshawn Vaughn could see a good amount of work here if they rest both Rachaad White and Uncle Lenny. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I have bad vibes. This team is going to start the starters and then pull them quickly, which is like the worst possible scenario because the backups
all the sicko plays. Then.
Yeah, I don't want to play the backups because they're backup caliber players, and they will be getting 2.5 quarters or whatever. I have this from Greg Auman that Brady has played, he has played in 3 games that had 0 meaning. I'm sure he's played many others that had very little playoff implication. We had 3 games with 0 meaning. In 2005, he left after 3 series. In 2009, he left midway through the second. And in 2014, he played the entire first half. You can't play anyone in any football game in terms of fantasy and in DFS, those types of things, or betting. You cannot play them if they're not playing 3.5 quarters. Feels like pretty a fair line to set. And they have to be really good. Like we like Patrick Mahomes when he plays 3.5 quarters because he probably dropped 5 touchdowns then. We don't like Keyshawn Vaughn. We don't like Keyshawn Vaughn getting 3.5 quarters. So I'm not playing almost a single person. And I really think this is a 2 series and leave or a half or, a quarter and leave, whatever type of game.
Blaine Gabbert and Cash. What might have been.
Look, you got more sicko plays coming up. Don't you worry.
What might have been. I know. So kind of a non-sicko play in this game. Tyler Algier finishing the season extremely strong. We're already getting in. I've seen people already debating his ADP, including me. We actually talked about it on the show.
Yeah, I've seen people in the mirror already.
I know we're all trying to find the guy who did this. But is there any DFS juice here with Tyler Algier in Week 18? It's a real tough Bucs run defense. But as we just alluded to, it was a Bucs run defense that kind of got off to a poor start this year, and then kind of reverted to Bucs run D form. But as we just said, there's nothing really for the Bucs to play for. Do we like Tyler Algier in DFS this weekend?
Yeah, I don't know if you said this off the top, but the most obvious, whether it be, regardless of history, their situation now, the most obvious reason I can tell you their starters will not play long is last I checked, the Atlanta Falcons under Desmond Ridder are 4-point favorites.
Yeah.
That tells me all I need to know about what Tampa Bay is expected to do in this game, strongly expected to do. And as a 4-point home favorite, coming off of the past 3 weeks, 55 carries, just shy of 300 yards and 200 touchdowns, 56% of his entire team's carries. Yeah, Algier is a really strong option this week. And he's only 5,600 on DK or something. Still haven't priced him up.
Oh, yeah. I just realized he's 100 yards shy of 1,000 on his rookie year. Is that what you were going to say, Denny?
That's what I was going to say. They're going to get him to 1,000.
Yeah. Wow. I hadn't realized that. He's only gotten to 100 in a game on the ground one time all year.
Right.
He's reached 95 yards from scrimmage each of the past 3 weeks, and he's reached 74 yards rushing. Yeah. I think Denny's right. They're going to get him to 1K.
Arthur Smith. I mean, he's going to raise a banner for 1,000 yards for Tyler.
Or it could be maybe Arthur Smith, Denny, though. Anytime you expect him to do something, he takes personal offense to that. So we're going to quote throw to Kyle Pitts. We'll see about that. We're going to throw to Drake London. We'll see about that, big guy.
Yeah, Arthur Smith, if you're listening, ignore what I said. You're gonna. Here's what we want you to do. Give the ball to Cordarrelle Patterson 25 times.
Yes. Arthur Smith, all of us fantasy bros have been pounding the table, pound for Olamide Zaccheaus. Throw to him a bunch of times in this game.
We love our Olamides.
Okay, now that he's not listening, Drake London says.
So yeah, Arthur, please just do the right thing. Get this young man to 1,000 yards rushing. The Baltimore Ravens travel to Cincinnati as touchdown underdogs. This game is kind of this other one, like the Bills stuck in playoff seeding limbo. God, again, what is at stake here because the Bengals can't get the number 1 seed. They already have, if the Bills game doesn't count, which is all signs are suggesting the Bills game is not going to count. The Bengals have the AFC North wrapped up correctly. So what is going on?
I'm pretty sure you have that as backwards as it could be. Because I believe they have a 1-game lead over the Ravens, but the Ravens could tie. And I think the Ravens beat them earlier this year, which would give them the tiebreaker. And you are correct that they are knocked out of the 1 seed if that game, which all signs point to it not being made up, that does knock them out of the 1 seed. So AFC North crown's still in play, though. And assuming that game is not played, this game does matter.
Are you sure the AFC North crown is in play? Because I think based on winning percentage, it is not going to be in play.
I guess we don't know what's going on with that yet either.
Well, let's see. I'm just going to pull out a calculator, Kyle. If the Bengals lose this game, they will have a 687 winning percentage. And so the Bengals, and if the Ravens win this game, they'll have a 647. So the AFC
we don't know though that win percentage is the answer, right? Like I
think it's going. Yeah.
Okay. If you're confident that's the case, then correct.
I think it's going to be win percentage. I think the Bengals have the AFC North locked up. If that is the route,
they will also
decides to go.
They have to know by Sunday.
You would think. The NFL though, a lot of challenge accepted a lot in those situations.
Producer Adam though, if you're wondering, does say I'm correct on all this.
No, I'm pretty sure I'm. If it's winning percentage, the AFC North is already toast. The Bengals have won it.
I believe that is correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Because they would tie at 12 wins apiece, I believe, and then that would
sorry, I'm sure this is a really riveting podcast.
I'm riveted.
Or they would tie at 11 wins, right?
Yeah, they would tie at 11 wins, but the Ravens would have one more loss.
Yes, correct. So
the AFC North salted away, folks. You heard it here first. Unless that's not what they do.
unless it's not.
Just got word on the TL, the timeline, as the kids say, that Mike White was downgraded today and is not looking great for this week. So I'm going to grab the mic real quick. Listen, Robert Saleh, if you're listening, we need 15 rushing attempts from Chris Streveler this week.
Oh my gosh.
We need it.
Please.
I'm begging you. I'm begging you for it. We need it.
Denny, you started off the show like beautiful words, kind of like the harmony of man, how we all need to stop taking life for granted, and then you do something like this.
You got to counterbalance.
You do something like this.
The yin and the yang.
Frankly, and the lawyers, even the lawyers have been trying to take mercy on you this week, and they're not happy. My phone's blowing up already.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So yeah, Chris Streveler, 15. I'm in my Boomer points only league that goes to the end of the season. Let's just say I badly needed Mike White this Sunday. Real bad news.
That's on you.
It is on me. That is true. That is true. Okay, what in the world are we talking about here? Kyle, do the Ravens have a playoff prayer without Lamar Jackson? I don't even know what does this even mean? I don't even know what this question means. I guess I was asking if Lamar doesn't come back, do they have any shot in the playoffs?
That's how I took it. I understood it to be right.
What does this even mean? Yeah.
Because they're locked in the playoffs. So they don't need a win this week to make the playoffs specifically.
Lamar not practicing, by the way, this week.
Yeah, Lamar not practicing. At the beginning of the week, John Harbaugh, who I'm sure is sick of answering this question, said he didn't know if he would practice this week. That all signs are pointing to him not playing. I do imagine he comes back for the playoffs. It will have been a long time of rest for him. I think he comes back for the playoffs. But if he doesn't, no, they don't really have a strong shot. Huntley hasn't been terrible, right? He's since taking over in week 13, 24th in EPA per play, 22nd in success rate. Not too bad. Top 10 on the dot, in fact, in CPOE. But the team has been couching him entirely behind a run game. They have a minus 12% pass rate over expected since we saw his first appearance. They haven't been putting up a ton of points. And do they have a chance at beating teams in the regular season with Tyler Huntley? Sure, they absolutely do. But when you cut out half of the league, the lower half of the league, and they're forced to play playoff caliber teams every single week, not really. No, I don't think they do, frankly.
Not sure about the Ravens' new tradition of coming out looking pretty good, but flawed in the first half of the season. And then in the entire second half of the season, it's not looking like a good team. I guess both times because of Lamar Jackson injuries. Yeah. But also, it could maybe have a single pass catcher available who played the position of wide receiver. Yeah, would be nice if the Baltimore Ravens did that. Denny, do we trust the Bengals to remain pass happy? I guess not necessarily in this game, but going into the postseason. It seemed like Zach Taylor got the message earlier than usual this year. We pedal to the metal Bengals in the postseason.
Yeah, I think they seem to realize that it's their best path to victory, and thank goodness for that, because it makes them one of the more exciting offenses in the league. Now, teams have really, really ramped up two high safeties against Joe Burrow and the Bengals to the point where a lot of Burrow's throws are underneath. That doesn't necessarily mean it's bad for Jamar Chase. But the downfield stuff is going to be limited because teams have, like they did with Mahomes and the Chiefs a couple years ago, said, nope, or last year, I guess, That's not happening anymore. We are not letting you just go over the top of us every time. So I think that opens up, potential targets, potential opportunities for a guy like Hayden Hurst, for Tyler Boyd, Samaj P. Ryan, if he gets some sort of passing down role. The Cincinnati has been way over their expected pass rate in 7 of their past 8 games. Joe Burrow is 4th in pass attempts from week 11 to week 16, excluding last week, obviously. So, I think we can expect more just all out passing. They do not shift to the run against weak run defenses like we were talking about. The Eagles certainly do, and the Bills are starting to do.
We'll be right back after this. Just a reminder, if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app, go download it now. The contests are free and easy to play, and you have a shot to win thousands this weekend by predicting what will happen in college football and in the Premier League. There's also $100,000 up for grabs by guessing the outcome between the Lions and Packers and our Sunday Night 7 contest. And don't forget, download the Rotoworld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players in your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in your app store today. And we're starting to get down to kind of the dredges here. Vikings at the Justin Fields-less Bears. Nathan Peterman back in our lives this week 18. The Vikings are only 7.5-point favorites, at least in the line I was looking at, which to me suggests Vegas is not expecting anywhere close to 60 minutes like of Kirk Cousins and Dalvin Cook, maybe like at least a half. But I feel like if they were if the Vikings like had something like really to play for, which they have a little to play for, I think they'd probably be like 12.5-point favorites, maybe 13.5-point favorites. Denny, this game, this is my question for this game. This is going to get weird, isn't it?
I guess it is. I actually thought that the Vikings had enough to play for that their guys would play. Is that, Kyle, is that not the case?
I think they're just playing for 2-3 seed flop, which like matters. That will be like impactful if they make it deep in the playoffs for home field advantage and for who they play in the first round. But I think kind of like Pat said, I'd project them for less than 4 quarters, mostly because they should roll in the first 2 or 3 quarters. And I think this line just reflects the fact that
I think the line reflects they have something to play for, but it's going to be a game where they kind of like sleepwalk to that, and then probably pull their guys early.
Right. Well,
I mean, last week what Jared Goff was playing while the team was up 28, right? We won't see Kirk Cousins up 28. We might see him up 14, but beyond that, it's difficult to say, and that's where I think the line is at.
Justin Jefferson needs 194 yards to break Calvin Johnson's single season receiving record. So I guess that's definitely not happening if this is all true.
He can get it in the first half.
Yeah, it's just say if he's sitting at like 150 at halftime, then it is happening.
Well, but I just, this line makes no sense to me. Like if you expect Justin Jefferson to be out there, he's going to be catching passes from Kirk Cousins. Why would they rest anybody else? Like this line, I would have thought would be, I don't know, 15. So that is concerning. I kind of thought they would let Justin Jefferson go after it full force, but maybe not.
Well, maybe the concern is they are going to let Kirk Cousins cook, and when Kirk Cousins cooks, that just involves throwing like a lot of picks.
As soon as O'Connell came out and said like we're playing the starters full 4 quarters of Kirk Cousins, the line like plummeted.
Not his fault though. The meltdown last week was not his fault. Kyle, any sickos we like in this game? KJ Osborne, Equiminius, St. Brown, Byron Pringle, Khalil Herbert. Where are my sickos at?
Nope, they're not here. Don't play the sickos in this game. On the Viking side, it's the same thing. It's less of the same thing, but it is kind of the same thing as, I mean, maybe you could throw some darts on like a Justin Jefferson going for the record or whatever, but that's not sicko, right? The sicko plays are the backups. And for the Bears, the backups are just the starters, and they're just going to be terrible. Nathan Peterman, as you noted, US dollars, Nathan Peterman, no translation errors. Nathan Peterman is starting. Don't play any of the Bears. And Vikings, you would play the starters if you wanted to be, very risk on with this game, which is a fine thing to do, I guess.
Kyle, you need to make at least a few tournament lineups with Nathan Peterman, right?
No, you don't. Again, this is not financial advice, legally speaking, but please God, don't do that.
That's just moral advice. That's like quality of life advice. Do not do that. No tournament lineups. with Nathan Peterman, please.
Now, Chris Streveler is another
okay.
story completely.
Yeah, we're trying to keep the good vibes going, Denny. So you're making it really, really hard. You're making it really, really hard. The New Orleans Saints host the Carolina Panthers as 3.5-point home favorites. Strikes me as kind of a shocking line, too. I think the Panthers have appeared to be a far better team than the Saints like the past 2 months. But that is not the case. Saints are home favorites. Kyle, one last ride for a Deontay Foreman season, who gets home real big in fantasy, like when he gets his rushing numbers, which is like 2 out of 3 games. But when he doesn't get his rushing numbers, he's like a donut waiting to happen because he does not only does he not catch passes, he does not get targeted in the passing game.
Yeah, he's a non-factor as a quote receiver, but last week he saw 81% of the carries. It's not a particularly far spread, and the Saints have slowly become worse and worse to the point where they're in the second half of the season below average in EPA per rush allowed. So they started off this season looking like a pretty strong defense, but it's kind of dwindled away to the point where I'm not worried because Deontay Foreman, for a few weeks, it looked like he was actually splitting the backfield with Chuba Hubbard. But I think that comes down to the fact that they were running 40 plus times in those games. So you're not going to give Deontay Foreman 40 carries, but you only have 20.
Speak for yourself.
Look, it'd be very fun to see him. He was like that kind of back in college too. He got so much.
If he got 40 carries, he'd be going up at like 250, 260. I'd like it.
Yeah. I mean, he won't get that, but I do think in any game where they scale the volume back on the ground, probably because like last week they're losing, in any game where they scale the volume back, they scale his share of the pie up. And if they get to run the ball 40 times, that's the scenario in which you don't see him dominate the backfield. And that's okay. Like that's just how you manage a player to not get hit 40 times. So it looks like a pretty solid spot for him.
Denny, what is the Saints' outlook in this game? They're, I think, a little healthier than Chris Olave returned last week, but did he play his full complement of snaps? He avoided a setback. Either way, the Saints are a little bit healthier. They're in the dome. What is their outlook for their final game?
Yeah, Olave ran almost all the routes. Kyle and Karain mentioned Rashid Shaheed last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago. I forget, but yeah, I'm very, very into Shaheed against this very bad, exploitable Carolina secondary, even with Olave back and playing a full complement of snaps and routes. Rashid Shaheed saw more targets, saw 6 targets to 5 for Olave. You just go down the line like he is like the big downfield splash play guy for the New Orleans offense right now. I kind of think this game has a little bit of appeal, a little bit of back and forth appeal if the Panthers are willing to go in that direction. DJ Moore, I think he needs 102 receiving yards for 1,000 yards on the season.
That's what we like to hear.
Which, when you adjust for quarterback play, makes it the greatest single season in history. I mean, it really, truly, like, how does this guy have a chance to have 1,000 yards in this offense? I think it speaks to how good a player he is. So
it does, and like it's why we're going back. He's gonna be one of those players like fantasy managers are getting tired of hearing about. Like, we swear to God, DJ Moore is worth a 2nd or 3rd round pick this year. I'm trying to do Kyle's voice, like, I swear to God, all right. And
the thing is, the New York Deli guy, he doesn't like DJ Moore. Like,
he likes winners.
Guys, you got to look at DJ Moore's yards per route run. It's really good.
Do we know if J.C. Horn is playing this? I can't find J.C. Horn on the injury report, but he's like not on the IR. Like that would be a pretty big factor for Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave. By the way, I'm feeling really good about getting Rashid Shaheed for absolutely nothing in my dynasty league. I just like scooped him up off waivers after like a 2nd or 3rd game. Like no one was believing in it. I mean, I know he's a 24-year-old undrafted rookie, but he appears to be quite good.
He's had horns on IR. Wasn't like the wrist thing right? And it seemed like he's fine. It's just when you get knocked out of playoffs, that's what you do.
It's Rashid Shaheed season then. Rashid Shaheed season. It's very hard to say. Dallas Cowboys at the Washington Commanders. Cowboys, here's another one of those lines. The Cowboys are only 7.5-point favorites. I think the Commanders have been eliminated. I think Vegas is just kind of anticipating a sleepy game, one where Dallas does not have to go all out to win. Because Dallas does have – could Dallas still be the number 1 seed if the Eagles lose?
I believe they need both the 49ers, who are like the real team looming for the number 1 seed, and the Eagles, who are the one who currently holds it. They need them both to lose, but that is more than possible. And I think Jerry Jones even said earlier in the week that they still care about that. They care about home field advantage. And even if the 49ers win and the Eagles lose, they would get to reclaim the NFC East, right? And that is impactful for home field throughout.
It is. So. And they tend to play their starters, I think. And they've had a few situations like this where they've played guys where, like, even the Cowboys, they can't possibly play Zeke this week, right? And then in the third quarter, and he's got like his 13th carry still. But anyway, enough about the Cowboys. Denny, what anyone really wants to know about this game is sicko Sam Howell. Does it happen in DFS?
No, we're getting disgusting with Sam Howell and possibly Jonathan Williams, who could be the RB1 here if both Antonio Gibson's on IR and Brian Robinson is not practicing. I think we can safely say he's probably not going to play this week.
Brian Robinson? How serious is the Brian Robinson injury? Do we know this guy?
He hasn't practiced.
Well, he hasn't practiced, but I didn't think it was like that serious, actually.
The thing is with so many like non-serious injuries at this point, there is,
right.
They hold him out.
Taylor Heineke literally just gave up whatever snaps he was going to play. Honestly, a kind of decent thing to do when like your lot heading into free agency or whatever has already been settled and Sam Howell maybe deserves a shot. A nice thing to do, but a very competitive guy just said, nah, don't need him. Let me take the week off. Right. So if what Denny says, Brian Robinson not practicing, it probably isn't that serious. Hopefully not, at least it wouldn't really matter.
So Sam Howell comes with a little bit of rushing appeal in in 3 preseason games. He had 93 yards and 2 touchdowns, showed a willingness to take off, especially near the end zone, as rookies do. They do the one read and then go. That could have some appeal here. I think the Cowboys could put up like 50 points here, by the way. Like
they could. They do love to do that. They did that last year in a game where the Eagles in week 18, didn't try. I forgot about that.
This line doesn't make any sense. It should be 22 or something. Like the Cowboys are going to go ham on the Commanders.
I forgot about that. The Eagles had nothing to play for, and the Cowboys put up a 50 burger last week 18. I actually did forget about that. So, Kyle, what do we actually think the Cowboys are going to do? How much do we think we're going to play in this? Are we going to get 60 minutes of the Dallas Cowboys stars?
I think we close. I do think they are playing. They're playing as if, and they are correct, that they have a small chance to get the 1 seed. And even if not, they have a chance to get far better seeding and home field playoff advantage. If both teams ahead of them I mentioned win, this game doesn't really matter.
Playing at the same time as the Eagles 49ers.
Yes, they will. The most they can do is watch the scoreboard to try and find out what their standing is. But that is probably a difficult thing to change mid-game to play players who did not prep to start this game. So I think the only way they get pulled late is if the game is clearly decided. It's much more close to a regular season game in which, like I said with Mahomes, Mahomes got pulled in the 4th quarter. Oh, 5th or 6th touchdown. And which one they pull him after? This will be that kind of game, though it is probably it's not as much Dak. It's the whole offense, the running back specifically, because don't have high hopes for this Washington offense this week.
It is a curious line. It is seriously only a touchdown for the Cowboy. I mean, maybe part of that is in these weird in limbo games, you do to see teams kind of come out flat, even when there's something to play for. It must just be hard to get all the way up for a game like this, where the implications of it are just unclear. But Denny could be right. I mean, the Cowboy. Come on, let's just be real. This is the Cowboys Super Bowl. I mean,
no. The Cowboys the Cowboys perform poorly under pressure. There's no pressure here.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. That's why this is their Super Bowl. This is their moment to shine.
This is, what this is? This is you go out to the range and you're just striping your driver down the fairway every single time, and you're like, dang, how good am I? I can't believe how straight and far I can hit my driver. And then you step up to the first tee and you hit it directly in the water 45 yards to the right. So
this game is Cowboys weather. This game is Cowboys weather. Speaking of weather, I'm sure it'll be absolutely horrific in Pittsburgh, where the Cleveland Browns arrive in town as 3-point underdogs. There's never been a single nice day in any AFC North division city after November 1st, has there. Kyle is from this region. He can attest. Kyle, is there any chance we have to hand it to Kenny Pickett, who now in back-to-back weeks has been kind of the worst player on the field for 57 minutes. And then the final 3 minutes of the game turns into the aforementioned Dan Marino.
I can't believe I'm being asked this question. I mean, Kenny Pickett, since coming out of the bye, he missed, I believe, 1 game and a decent bit of another game. But since that bye, Steelers are 6-2. That's what you're referencing in some sense, and most of those.
And Mike Tomlin, he's still underrated. It is just ridiculous.
Probably, yeah. And I mean, even when you look at the end of the Ben Roethlisberger era, I'm not a watch the games guy, but you watch the games and you got to hand it to Mike Tomlin. If anything,
the reason Mike Tomlin gets underrated, kind of like Andy Reid used to, is because like his weaknesses are like so visible. It's like, if Mike really needed to call a timeout there, or like, Mike making the worst challenge decision of literally all time.
Mike, Najee Harris's 14th carry, and every single one has been on 1st and 10. That's the move.
His weaknesses are quite visible, but his strengths are like just keeping a team prepared, keeping a team motivated. Mm-hmm. He's like almost unparalleled. Extremely good coach. Anyways, do we have to hand it to Kenny Pickett?
No, you don't. No. Since the bye, Kenny Pickett is 14th in EPA per play. It's around league average, 23rd in CPOE, a little below average. I mean, he's not bad, I don't think. I actually, like, looking at this, was a little more optimistic on his future. I don't have...
So it sounds like... Say it. Got to hand it to him.
Relative to my personal expectations, I have some small gloved hand to Kenny Pickett. He's been fine. He's been fine. And because he's been fine, there should be some hope for next year, though I'm not really sure what his ceiling as a player is. A conversation for another day. The biggest reason the Steelers, and you're asking me if I have to hand it to Kenny Pickett, that they're 6-2, is they've given up more than 17 points once since the bye. Kenny Pickett's capable of putting up 18 points in some games.
I don't know if you heard little things called quarterback wins, and he's got 2 of them the past 2 weeks, stirring last second drives over such elite teams known as the Josh McDaniels Raiders.
Interestingly, in a game in I think almost over 3/4 of a game, Mitch Trubisky, small sample admittedly, since the bye, first in CPOE, first in EPA per play. Lord. I'd love to see that guy get some more snaps.
Oh my God, please stop. Danny, why are the Browns so bad? I really kind of can't figure this out. Their offensive personnel is not that bad, but they have just been playing bad since Deshaun Watson became the starting quarterback. Why are they so bad?
Lack of identity. They just don't have an offensive identity. They're still identifying as the Baker Mayfield Browns, and they have Deshaun Watson in there. You look at their pass rate over expected, and it's below expected every week. And they have Nick Chubb, and they talk about we're going to feed Nick Chubb no matter what. And it's like, you broke NFL precedent and literally broke the bank for this guy. Maybe use him, maybe have him drop back and throw some passes, and maybe they'll get into that next year.
I think we're going to see an entirely different Browns offensive identity in 2023.
Yeah. But there were, I remember, reading some columns by Browns columnists, observers before the season saying Deshaun Watson does not fit in Kevin Stefanski's offense as it currently is. It's not even close. It's maybe the worst fit possible, and that's what it looks like right now. So things are going to have to change, obviously.
And maybe it's just too hard to change after 11 games. You can't just flip a switch, I guess, when you're playing one style with Jacoby Brissett and going to Deshaun Watson. But it's going to be they can't come back with this approach in 2023 because, like you said, it's not the proper identity. It does not fit the quarterback whatsoever. And it's going to be a big coaching challenge for Kevin Stefanski. Speaking of a big coaching challenge, the Broncos are going to try to win a game with the guy who was hired because he was supposedly good at running the clock or something. The interim, what's this guy's name? Jerry Rosburg.
Yeah.
He's giving deranged quotes every day. He's pretty amazing.
No. The part where he said this Albert O guy looks good was not deranged. It was a very thoughtful and intelligent quote. And their tight ends weren't practicing early in the week, except for Albert O. Obviously, Greg Dulcich on IR. Sizzin, baby. What if Albert O was the player you needed in Week 18?
It's true. It's happening.
Anyway, that's really funny, by the way. The Rosberg is this kid Albert O. Why haven't we been playing him?
He saw Godzilla running a 4.39 or whatever. He isn't.
I'm telling you, the only reason again is a Mizzou alum who saw every one of Albert O's college games. The only reason is because I think they just don't trust him to stay healthy. He's had one of the poor injury histories you can have. He's unguardable.
He's been remarkably healthy this year. I can tell you that.
Well, they've done a good job keeping him healthy.
They've managed his reps quite well.
It's incredible, though. I mean, imagine how mad Nathaniel Hackett was when he saw Alberto score that touchdown.
I don't even mind not playing him over Greg Dulcich when Greg Dulcich was healthy. Like Greg Dulcich, I think is a pretty good player already. Like that was kind of when he stepped on the field. But like getting Eric Saubert out there, I guess like maybe sort of the thing is like you play Eric Saubert to be an inline blocker, and maybe that's not. I mean, it's probably not Alberto's thing. He's a big dude though. But
Eric Saubert was always the thesis of the Alberto play.
Just needed him and Andrew Beck and Eric Tomlinson to get hurt too.
So anyways, the clock manager guys coaching the Broncos against the Chargers, who are only 1.5-point road favorites. But Kyle, you can explain. It's because the Chargers, they have seeding to play for. Brandon Staley claims he's going to pursue that seeding, but Vegas doesn't view it as seemingly enough motivation for them to be more than 1.5-point favorites against one of the worst teams in the league.
Well, they only have seeding to play for if the Ravens win in the morning slate too.
Yeah, because this is in the afternoon.
Exactly. It's in the afternoon slate. So they may have nothing to play for by the time their game kicks off. And I do think, I mean, Staley pointed out he wasn't as much talking about like, he wasn't doing the Brady thing. Like, I'm a football player. I got to get my reps in. He noted the seeding stuff. So I do think they would probably still give their starters some run.
I think probably at least a half. Because I think as you guys kind of pointed out with the Cowboys, they're preparing them all week to play.
I do think like as a strategic process-based thing, it'd be kind of difficult to go in and prep none of the players who are starting to actually play. So I think we'd see a half maybe, but they would literally have nothing to play for in that event. So I don't, it's possible. We have to see how the 1:00 games play out. If you're like playing DFS, check up at 4:00, maybe give yourself a few more minutes. Let's call it 3:45. See how things are going.
Yeah.
I would be swapping off Chargers though, if they have nothing to play for. That's what I'll say.
So, Denny, my question to you then is, does this time it count with the Chargers heading into the playoffs? Are they getting it together? Is this finally the year for the Chargers to, just not completely embarrass themselves? They're not going to go to the Super Bowl, but are they going to not completely embarrass themselves in the playoffs?
I think that there's a good chance they won't embarrass themselves completely. Now, are they going to have a normal playoff game in the first round?
No.
Of course not. Like, even if it looks normal at halftime, it's not going to end normal. Like, you know that it's just not. So we have to keep that in mind. I mean, the main issue is that they don't let Justin Herbert go downfield. Or
he doesn't have a good arm. He's not Dan Marino reincarnated, Denny, so you don't let him go down the field.
He is like, I know that's what
you really, I know. Sorry to layer on the irony. So he is Dan Marino reincarnated.
Cutting through your 8 layers of irony. Yes, this is current Marino, and they're like, hey, you ever seen Drew Brees? Do what he did. Drew Brees had to get on his tiptoes to see over the lineman, and he would just dump it over to Alvin Kamara over and over and over again. Sorry to my former colleague Drew Brees, by the way, if you're listening. So I don't think that they have the juice to get past probably the first round, and if they do, they'll probably get crushed and eventually in these playoffs. But I think that certainly Brandon Staley, our former analytics king, saved his job, and possibly forced Sean Payton to go somewhere he doesn't really want to go.
I know it is a shame that it's taken Sean Payton to the Chargers off the table. The Chargers are getting healthier. Joey Bosa back, but isn't the Chargers line super, super banged up? Sorry to put you on the spot, but you just know this off the top of your head. Denny does too.
They are banged up, but Bosa makes a big difference, by the way, in pressure rate. I was looking at that before the show, and the Chargers were not getting to the quarterback without Bosa. Obviously, they do at a much higher rate with him. And, so him being back is big for their chances. Now, again, I think it all comes down to the fact that Justin Herbert throws 45 times a game, and 35 of them are just like right near the line of scrimmage in the short areas of the field. You're not going to put up a lot of points that way, and they're going to need a lot of points.
I don't know why I'm asking this, especially as the podcast is getting kind of long, but any chance of the 2023 Russell Wilson revival?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are good head coaching candidates out there. Last year, as if it's already over. During the Hackett era, we saw some pretty poor decision making on so many different fronts. I mean,
A
Wilson.
lot of it had to be coaching. It just did.
A lot of it did. There is kind of a heel turn punchline at the end of this, but a lot of the coaching stuff was poor. Russell Wilson. I almost called him Zach Wilson, and that is like such the perfect Freudian slip at this point, right? Russell Wilson was 30th in play action rate among quarterbacks. He thrives under play action. They didn't let him do that. Broncos were below average in early down pass rate under Hackett. They're below average in making the correct decision on fourth downs based on win probability gained. They ranked no lower than 6th in total offsides, false starts, delay of games, and offensive holdings. And I don't know if that's quite personnel. I mean, it's some personnel, it's some coaching and preparedness. But I mean, I remember watching some of these games and crucial moments, and they're just taking delay of games. Like they were the most incoherent, unput together team we've seen since last year under Urban Meyer. But before that, it would go back a long time. That team is iconic. This team is a close runner up. On the other hand, there are some concerning signs for Russell Wilson. He is the CPOE god. And what that means is that when you adjust for his depth of target, he is so incredibly accurate because he throws deep balls and intermediate passes better than anyone else, really. I mean, he's the best quarterback by CPOE up until this year, in which he was dreadful. He was 32nd. Like, he's just not accurate anymore. And do I think that is also partly fueled by the complete incoherence of the coaching? Supposedly he didn't even like understand all the pre-snap calls and stuff. Some of that, yes, but like some of it's on him. So I can't put this all on coaching. I think Hackett was out of his depth as a coach. I think Wilson got exposed this year as a quarterback who has talent, but was propped up by his coaching. And that shocks me to say. Like you gotta
hand it to Pete Carroll. You just do.
You absolutely have to hand it to. There's no doubt about it. He maximized his quarterback's talents, I think, or at least close to it. He accentuated his quarterback's talents well. Maybe he could have done more, but it's clear that there was also a way to do infinitely less.
I think an underrated storyline with Russell Wilson might be too that he came back way too quickly from his finger injury last season, and he was not the same after that. I wonder if he like jacked up his finger. And I'm getting like pure speculation territory, but he has not been the same since that finger injury that he rehabbed famously like 20 hours a day, didn't he?
Yeah.
Last year.
Right. He bragged about not sleeping.
He actually did. This is actually not a bit.
No, and rehabbing it. And then he was terrible for the first 4 weeks. It took him a month to even be able to grip the ball properly. So I just sometimes with this guy, you just like, can you just please take a chill pill?
No, he will never take a chill pill. You know who is taking a chill pill this week, at least according to the Las Vegas bookmakers? The New York Giants, because they're 14-point underdogs to the Philadelphia Eagles. They are locked into their seed, Kyle. I think we kind of already talked about this. Is there such a thing as a sicko Giant play? Since I think you already made this joke, but since their starters are already the sicko plays.
Their starters aren't as sicko plays as the Bears. Like the Bears' number one receiver is Dante Pettis, Equinemius St. Brown or something. In this spot, Darius, I did just say, like, I was about to say Richie
Darius
James.
Slayton, Richie James, and who's the third
Isaiah
guy?
Hodgins.
Yeah. They're sicko plays.
No, they're not going to play.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, yeah, but they're.
What he's saying is that like I'm like, oh, the Bears starters are sicko plays, but Isaiah Hodgins, he's a legit guy.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think the running back spot would be very interesting because obviously they're not playing. They don't play Saquon Barkley if they're not playing the starters, which, like you said, the line all but makes this inevitable. And Dable even said early in the week, it's like, oh, we'll evaluate and see how things are late in the week. Like if you're Brady and that team are committed to playing, and they have told us that. The indifference, the indecisiveness, that tells you what you need to know, as does the line. I would be interested. You could talk me into Gary Brightwell, who, as of right now, if they didn't play Saquon Barkley, I don't even know if they play Matt Breida, because Breida has kind of generally been the pure backup to Barkley. He's the only running back left on the roster. He's the third one. They probably call a practice squad guy if they thought that it was necessary. They thought they weren't going to play the starters at all. You could talk me into some Gary Brightwell. I'd be less optimistic on starting the receivers because I don't think we'd see a strong, obviously, we would not see a strong passing game. It's been a relatively weak passing game. when they've had the starters, let alone when they go to Tyrod Taylor and the backup receivers. But running back, I'm more just hunting for volume. So definitely play this one by ear. I'd like to get some more confirmation that like maybe Matt Breida also gets some backseat the way that Samaje Perine is mostly a backup, but they rest him whenever they rest the starters. If Breida was at that level, Gary Brightwell would be exciting.
Yes. Brightwell season.
Brightwell season. Jalen Hurts appears to be coming back as the Eagles try to put the finishing touches on the number 1 seed in the NFC. Any chance he might be low rostered since managers probably are not expecting an explosive game because of the line, because of the perception the Giants aren't even going to try.
Right. Yeah.
Because he's been hurt and out.
Yes. No, I could see that. Just the same with Dak Prescott, like this idea that the Cowboys are going to get up by 17 and then rest their starters. Or I don't know. I don't even know where that thinking would lead you. But yeah, I think an Eagles onslaught could be in order here. The Eagles have lost two in a row. There's some building frustration. Hurts back. They could just annihilate the Giants, who have no reason. They have no reason to play any of their main guys. Even on defense, they're banged up a little bit in the secondary. Rest those guys. Yeah, I could see lots of Eagles being under rostered. I say that on Thursday afternoon. Who knows what the steam will be this weekend? I don't know.
I do think it makes competitive sense kind of for the Eagles to go all out because so they've gotten uncalibrated without Jalen Hurts. If they win, they have the bye. They kind of I actually see the competitive argument, the boomer argument of they gotta get back in sync heading into the playoffs.
I can see that. Yeah.
Another team that is 14-point favorites, the San Francisco 49ers against the David Blau led, quote unquote led Arizona Cardinals. Vegas is expecting an annihilation here for obvious reasons, Kyle. DFS case for any Cardinals, ? DeAndre Hopkins not playing in this game. James Conner probably also not playing in this game.
Yeah, I mean, on the upside, lots of PPR volume to go around. They had 3 players, McBride, Greg Dortch, Marquise Brown, with target shares of 24% or higher, super concentrated offense. So when they're ultimately forced to pass in this game, which Vegas and anyone with eyes can tell you will be the case by 3 drives in at most, really. When they're forced to pass, lots of concentrated PPR volume to go around. They threw the ball 40 times last week. The downside to that is that on 40 attempts, they mustered 222 yards. And that's why, maybe you can play Greg Dortch as a value play. The same could be said for Trey McBride, who was actually extremely productive last week after really not appearing in the box score almost at all this year. I don't know if I'd be willing to bet everything on Marquise Brown simply based on for a DFS perspective, price. I want to play these guys because I think they have a good shot at getting 13 or something. And that's not why I'm playing Marquise Brown. So
look, empires rise and fall. Oceans rise and recede. Greg Dortch is forever. Okay. And every Cardinals quarterback, the only thing we know for sure is that they're going to give Greg Dortch 10 targets as he had last week with David Blau under center. So it's happening again.
I just realized Rondale Moore is injured. I just realized this has become a Dalton Schultz, Blake Jarwin situation where no one wants to admit that Greg Dortch is better than Rondale Moore.
I don't know.
This is the tight end, Blake Jarwin, Dalton Schultz situation. Greg Dortch is Schultzing Rondale Moore.
Rondale Moore has never not hurt his hamstring, so that is an issue. but he's really good when he's in there. So
he's all right. Blake Jarwin was all right too.
We've also got a pretty reasonable case for coaching turnover coming. I can't say anything definitive, but there could be, and that will maybe shake things up in the way we want. Maybe not.
Denny, I was going to ask you about the 49ers, but there's just no point. We're going to move on to the other game. 49ers going to kill the Arizona Cardinals. The Los Angeles Rams visit the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks are nearly touchdown home favorites as they try to sneak into the playoffs. But Denny, I asked you about Cam Akers and the Rams. Is it Cam Akers season? We kind of talked about this on Monday already. Cam Akers, he's back, folks. So, so it's week 18 Cam Akers season.
It's been, it always has been. And you have 23 carries for Akers in week 16 against the Broncos, 19 last week against the Chargers, both for well over 100 yards. He gets the goal line work. He's seeing a lot of pass route running. Yeah. So I think that he profiles as a as like the centerpiece of their offense, pretty much, in an offense where Baker Mayfield is basically just dinking and dunking down the field. I like Akers a lot.
There we go. So you're putting him in full exposure in DFS, Denny?
Fully exposed. I am completely exposed to Cam Akers.
Just a lot of Cam. Kyle, what might the Seahawks offensive approach be? It's gotten a little incoherent because they've had wide receiver injuries. Geno Smith has regressed. Ken Walker was hurt, but now he's posting a lot of ground production every week again. What are we expecting to see against the Rams?
A lot of ground production from Ken Walker. For the past 2 weeks, it seems like he's fully healthy based on his workload. You don't give someone that much work if you don't think they're fully healthy. And they've kind of in turn turned into the Seahawks we've seen in previous seasons, a minus 7% pass rate over expected. This is a Rams team that their run defense has kind of fallen off the map. In the second half of the season, they are well below average in terms of rush EPA allowed. They're 20th. So I don't see any reason as pretty considerable home favorites looking to, I assume, just get healthy and get in the playoffs. Like Tyler Lockett banged up, like you said, Geno regressing. I assume
Are they winning in? Are they winning in?
No, but they have no control over their fate. It's win and then watch the Packers game.
Okay, so wait, if they win, so if the Seahawks lose, the Lions could get in, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Lions get in with the win if the Seahawks lose.
Seahawks must win and have the Lions beat the Packers. So if the Seahawks win and the Lions win, the Seahawks and Lions are in and the Packers are out? Is that what
No,
it is?
just the Seahawks are in, not the Seahawks and Lions.
Interesting.
There's only one in both conferences.
No, but what if the Seahawks win and the Lions beat the Packers? Are they both in?
No. There's only one spot up for grabs. The Giants have locked up.
Okay. All right. So
the Giants
how do the Lions get in?
They need Seattle to lose, which is why we said that they could be eliminated by the time their game kicks off. Basically, the pecking order, you can think of it as Packers, they're just winning in. Seahawks, their Packers lose, winning in. Lions are everyone has to lose and they get in.
All right.
The Steelers of the NFC, as we call them.
Not confused at all. Only note I put for our final game, Hugh at end was LOL. I like to say LOL, but some people make fun of me when I say LOL.
What about Raffle?
LOL, Raffle,
Lamau,
Elmau, Elmau. Yeah, those two you can never. I turned LOL into a word, and I think other people have. Yeah, I mean, this is the worst game I think I've ever seen in the history.
Yeah,
of the NFL.
well, both teams want to lose desperately.
They do. Except for the Texans actually want to win because they're so dumb.
Yeah. Well, Lovie Smith is going to go renegade here and just pour on the points against the Colts. Yeah.
Because the Texans do not have the number one seed, the number one pick locked up, right?
It's them and the Bears, and
the Bears are got news. The Bears are losing.
Yeah, exactly. So the Texans, they're losing with Nathan Peterman, right? So the Texans are not dead to rights number one seed. They get it with a loss, but a win and a very likely loss by the Bears flips it.
Yeah, really bad news for the Texans is that they are better than the Colts, I think, especially with Sam Ehlinger.
I don't know, man.
I think they're better than the Colts.
You know what this feels like, guys? It feels like Rex Burkhead season.
I was going to wonder if you guys were going to say anything.
Yeah,
I assume it's still. I mean, look, I got to be honest. I haven't been checking my Texans box scores lately. Is it not still Royce Freeman season?
No, it's Daria Gumbawale season in week 17.
Oh my god!
Yeah, things have gotten quite dark in the Texans' backfield. It might be like option 4 this weekend for all we know.
Yeah, I mean, Burkhead is. Interesting, I guess, maybe if he's active and everything. But I'd say Zach Moss is going to see 20 carries here.
Okay,
so that's a good call. That's a good call because I was thinking about like I literally just heard someone say on this show, Daria Ogunbowale season. We have less confidence in what's going on the Houston side. You're right. It's Zach Moss season on the other side of the ball.
It is. He
might be the one player with any juice whatsoever in this game, and it's pure volume based juice because there will not be any big plays.
And matchup. I mean, the Texans are just horrific.
That is true. They are
against the rush.
One of the worst ever run defenses. So, yeah, wow, this game exists, and so did this show. But now it's over. Brings an end to our regular season preview shows. We're still going to preview all the playoff weeks. We're still going to break down week 18, I believe on Monday. No Sunday show this week. The Sunday evening shows are over. We're going to recap it on Monday afternoon. We're going to have a bunch of great content for the playoffs. We have a bunch of great content for Week 18. Denny and Kyle both have really good articles kind of about what's at stake this week, like who's actually trying, because it is very confusing. So check out that stuff. Really, really good stuff from Denny and Kyle. Lawrence still has his flex finder on the site for some flex type plays. Either if your redraft league is still going or playing DFS, a useful article. Myself, Matthew Berry, both have rankings on the website. Check that out. Just keep it locked to the news. A lot of news this week, a lot of big news this week. So keep it locked onto the site. Thank you for listening to our preview shows all year. I'm saying as if they're ending. They're not. They're still staying for a while. But thank you for listening, and we'll be back later.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, okay? Respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.